There are some watches that are considered iconic. They might not necessarily have been the first of their kind, but they are the reference point for what other watches should look like. It's watches like the Omega Speedmaster, the Rolex Submariner, the Patek Philippe Calatrava, the Hamilton Khaki. These are watches that are considered enthusiast watches, and enthusiasts will recommend them to first-time buyers. Now, you should buy the watch that you like regardless of what other people think. But maybe you're wondering if going down this route is a little bit too predictable, a little bit too formulaic. You want to know the pros and cons of choosing one of these icons. The good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. What do you really need to know about a particular icon to make a slightly more informed decision? Let's dive in. Might as well start with a Rolex, and a lot of Rolexes have some degree of icon status. The Datejust, the Day-Date, the Daytona, the Explorer, the GMT. But of all the starter watches that Rolex has, the Submariner is the ultimate starter watch. On men's wrists in office environments, it's the Rolex I see the most. You can get it in a date and a no-date version. The watch is 41 millimeters in diameter. It's around 12.4 millimeters thick, depending on the model. It has a 47.6 millimeter luxury lug. The movement has 70 hours of power reserve. It has 300 meters of depth rating, and it retails for just under $10,000 in the no-date version. Why should you buy it? The strength of the Submariner is its versatility. There's nothing flashy other than the fact that it's a Rolex about it. The case is very simply finished. The bracelet has a matte brushing to it that ensures that the watch doesn't call too much attention to itself. In the base configuration, steel, black dial, black ceramic bezel is understated and unassuming. By modern conventions, you can wear this watch with everything. It goes with a suit, it goes with jeans, it goes with a t-shirt. It's not a dress watch in any way, but in part also because of changing norms, there's no situation where it doesn't work reasonably well. Like all Rolexes, it's robust, it's accurate, and it's a decent status symbol if that's important to you. So why wouldn't you buy it? Well, in every single company I've ever worked for, the luxury watch I see the most is the Rolex Submariner. At my current company, when I joined, 3 people owned a Submariner out of 6 people in the core leadership team. 1 wore a Breguet, 1 wore a Datejust, and the last person was an Air King. The Submariner isn't the most common watch in the workplace. That prize goes to a Garmin Fenix or an Apple Watch, but a close third place, it's likely the Submariner. Now, it's not just office dorks like me that buy Submariners, but the Submariner is the quintessential mid to upper level manager, ex-BCG, Mercedes C-Class, Whole Foods, marathon running, paddle tennis playing, that's pickleball for you Americans, carver ball eating watch choice. It's the safe choice. It's the common choice. It's in some ways the low effort choice. And that's not a bad thing. There are some things in my life that I buy and do because it's easy, it's safe, and it's good. I don't need to think about it. And if you just want a good luxury watch, then this is it. But if that description of being the guy that buys your suit in Hugo Boss and leases a Mercedes C-Class in factory set blue and eats his lunches at the du jour slop bowl place, and that gives you cringe vibes, then the Submariner is not for you. This watch is a statement piece in the sense that it's a Rolex and it's expensive, but it also says pretty much nothing because it's built for versatility, both in terms of aesthetics, but in terms of appeal. If you have any desire to shape your persona to the outside world, the Submariner just can't do it because it's designed to be broadly appealing and completely uncontroversial. The Omega Seamaster 300M, if for no other reason than the helium escape valve, instantly has more space to contribute to telling a story about you. So does a Blancpain 50 Fathoms or an IWC Aquatimer or a Glashütte Sea-Doo. Even a Super Ocean Heritage, which will brand you as sketchy, has more room for personal expression. If any of those things are important to you, the base black Submariner is just not it. If you're new to the watch world, if you're new to the icons that I'm talking about, then maybe you're also new to this channel. If so, please click the subscribe button. On this channel, I talk about watches that I love, I talk about the industry, and I talk about everything watch related. Please join me on my channel, subscribe, thanks a ton. If you own an Omega Speedmaster, no matter whether you're an enthusiast or just a one-watch owner, there is no way you don't know that this watch went in space and to the moon or something. Part of the buying experience at an Omega boutique, you see, is being strapped into a chair, clockwork orange style, eyes glued open, and being forced to hear the story about how this watch went to the moon. You were hoping for a bottle of champagne, but you got a speech about going to the moon, Hesalite, and some vague reference about some project in Alaska. The Speedmaster has all the versatility hallmarks of the Submariner as well. It has a black dial with a black bezel. It has a monochrome layout. It's premium looking, but not so shiny that it's overpowering. It's got the cachet of Omega. On paper, it's 42 millimeters, but it wears entirely middle of the road, and it's doable for a vast majority of male wrists. It can be worn with any strap or NATO, from the $300 Omega straps all the way down to $10 Thai night market NATOs. But that's where the similarities to the Submariner stop. First of all, it's a chronograph, which has its own kind of appeal because there are two kinds of chronograph buyers. There's the guy who actually uses a chronograph. I mean, you need to boil an egg, chronograph. You need to check if dominoes arrive in under half an hour, chronograph. You need to ensure that there's a minimum of 30 minutes of obligatory foreplay, chronograph. And then there's the guy that just thinks chronographs are cool without really being able to put into words why. Maybe it's the pushes and the ability to press buttons and fiddle with your watch when you're zoning out in boring meetings. Maybe it's something vague about racing and the millimeter, or it's a memory of childhood games in school where you would compete with your buddies on how high you can get in 60 seconds by pressing plus on your Texas Instruments calculator. Second, it may be the moon story. I remember 4 things about my childhood growing up in South Africa. I remember the day Nelson Mandela was released from prison. I remember when CNN filmed the bombing of Baghdad in the First Gulf War. I remember the Chernobyl incident. And I remember the Challenger explosion. My parents were around and tell the stories of listening to the radio when the first man stepped on the moon. I'm a Star Wars fan, but even more than that, I'm a Star Trek fan. And not some of this modern Netflix nonsense. It's Picard, it's Janeway, it's Kirk, and it's Cisco for me. Space and moon means something to a lot of people, and the Moonwatch delivers that. But why wouldn't you buy it? It's not like the Submariner. You won't see other people wearing it that often. It's not that it doesn't say something about you like the Submariner doesn't. No, it's because for a chronograph, it might not say enough. And to me, it's because there are 4 types of distinctive chronographs. There's the Pilot Chrono. It's the Breguet Type X, it's the IWC Pilot Chronos. They've got no tachymeter bezel. They are typically built for legibility and have some level of strong tool persona to them. There's the Vintage Racer Chronograph. It's watches like a Chopard Millimilia. This is the chronograph for the person that actually has leather racing gloves and has a car stowed away in a garage somewhere that only comes out on sunny days. Then there's the complicated chronograph. This is a watch that celebrates a bygone age of timing precision. It's watches like the Patek 5172, Breitling Premier B01. These are watches that call back to a time when men held the door open for women, society was more civil, and pocket watches were still a thing. Finally, there's the sports chrono, the Daytona, the Zenith Chronomaster Sport, the IWC Pilot Performance, and a million others. The Speedmaster is largely in this category. But the problem, above all else, with this category is, again, that it's the safe and sometimes undistinctive choice, and the Speedmaster is the least distinctive of them all. Where the Submariner, at its core level, is designed to be uninteresting, the Speedmaster to a lot of people isn't uninteresting, it's just not interesting enough compared to the alternatives. You can't say that the Hamilton Khaki is uninteresting or undistinctive. After all, it's a complete lineup and not one watch. There's the base Hamilton Khaki, there are Beobachtungsuhr style versions, there are automatic and quartz versions, there's the Murph, which is a massive crowd favorite. The Khaki is designed to be a tool watch, or at least tool forward. The cases are usually brushed or have some version of satin finish to them. There are no shiny applied markers. There's usually a copious amount of lume, and you can choose between more modern dial layouts and layouts that are heavily on the faux tina and emphasize some sort of trench warfare, trench coat 1916 kind of vibe. They're not dressy usually and aren't ideal for formal clothing, suits, ties, tuxedos, that kind of thing. But in pretty much most modern world scenarios, this watch is still going to work really, really well. This watch communicates a down-to-earth kind of personality. This is for a person that might not be a lumberjack, but you can split a log without splitting your shin open most of the time. It's a manly outdoor watch, but not in that wraparound Ray-Ban camo vest, crossbow, elk hunting, jiu-jitsu kind of way. That's more G-Shock territory. Why not buy it? Simple. It's a good watch, but there are a million like it, and there might be one from another brand that just suits you more. The Khakis are great, but they're not so iconic that they're visually head and shoulders above the competition. There are brands like Veja and Vertex that specialize in offering versions of the classic Dirty Dozen watches, which have a lot of historical appeal to some people. If you want something, let's call it more old school military, Longines have the heritage military. Brands like Stover also hit the mark more in terms of military vibe. At the high end, and not that I think a person considering a $40,000 watch is considering a $1,000 watch instead of it, but there's something like the 5226 from Patek, which is exquisite compared to a Hamilton Murph. The point here is that there are others from Hanhart and Vertex and Stover and Müller and a ton of others that on a model-to-model basis have options that are worth considering, first, or at least as alternatives. There are a few Calatrava models, but the two that embody the concept of icon are the simple Calatravas like the 5227 and the Clou de Paris versions like the 6119. Those are the classics to me, at least. These are dress watches in their purest form from a brand that embodies the style and restraint and class of a bygone time. Patek Philippe, 39 millimeters or less than 10 millimeters thick, gold cases, exquisite but typically very simple dress watch styles. The movement is the 26330 in the sweeping seconds model and the 3255 in the 6119. They're beautifully finished, they're simple, they're elegant, they are gorgeous watches. And personally, the 6119 has been a dream watch of mine for years. I owned an older version of a Calatrava once, but I ended up selling it. And why did I sell it? Because I barely ever wear dress watches and I learned that the expensive way. And you need to consider this. Dress watches are not common these days, and a lot of people are not dress watch people. If you're for some reason lusting after this watch and have never owned a luxury watch, you need to consider if you could be a dress watch guy. A guy that prefers suits over jeans or is at least okay with wearing a dress watch with casual clothing. And yes, rappers and movie stars have proven that you can wear a dress watch while wearing Crocs, Adidas pants and a hoodie, but that doesn't mean you should. Also, there is no real water resistance to these watches. Be prepared and be willing to baby this watch. The second reason you might not want to consider a Calatrava: there are starter watches in the space that I just think are better. Lange & Söhne 1815 34 millimeters, the Breguet Souscription with an exquisite dial which just won a GPHG award, the Chopard Quattro. The Patek is exquisite. The 26330 is a highly regarded movement. It's not as adorned as other high-end Patek movements, but it's not just a workhorse movement either. It's technically very competently put together with a lot of intelligent engineering decisions in an also good-looking package. But it's not enough of an icon, again, for you to write off a Lange, which is more beautifully finished. Subjective opinion, I know, or a Breguet or a Chopard. Second to my love of all things space is my love of all things flight. Third is my love of slide rulers. Not that I've ever understood how to use the things. I try, but I always forget. But the Navitimer from Breitling is a pilot's instrument with a full slide rule built into the dial. Do you know how to use it either? Probably not. Will you ever need it? Also, no. But at some point in the middle of the last century, a pilot asked Breitling if they could help them build a watch with an inbuilt calculator ruler so pilots could do math to figure out whether or not they were flying upside down or not. All Breitlings are, as we know, sketchy as hell and blingy and ostentatious and over the top. But there is still the Navitimer, which is available in an ostentatious version, but also available in that tool-forward original aesthetic. There are very few, if any, other watches that are like the Navitimer. It has a completely unique appeal. Breitling rarely gets a nod of respect from enthusiasts, but the Navitimer does. If you own it, some watch nerd will be like, ooh, Navitimer, cool. So why not buy it? Simple. This watch is the literal opposite of a Submariner. If you buy a Navitimer, you are that guy. Nico apparently owns a Navitimer. You don't have to be that guy, but choosing a Navitimer is an incredibly deliberate choice. I'd argue that no person just randomly walks into a store and just accidentally picks up a Navitimer. This is a watch you've seen for a long time, you've thought about it, you keep coming back to it, and you are entirely aware that it's like no other watch. If you haven't been through that process, this watch won't be you. To a lot of people, this watch is just information-wise a step too far. It's a slide rule chronograph calculator, for crying out loud. It's not understated, it's not simple, it's balanced, it's legible, but it's not restrained, and to some people it's just plain busy on the dial. You only buy this watch if they're on seeing it is love at first sight. You will never, ever, ever warm to this watch. It's love at first sight or forget it forever. So we can discuss whether the Santos or the Santos Dumont is the icon, or maybe it's the tank. All three have some version of iconic status. The Santos is the integrated bracelet option from Cartier. The tank is the ultimate dress watch classic worn by both Muhammad Ali and Andy Warhol. And the Santos Dumont is the dressier Santos with a little more old world feel to it compared to the regular Santos. They are all great watches. They are all in the realm of iconic status and they are just plain gorgeous. But why not choose them? Well, first, like it or not, some men associate Cartier with women's watches. And to be fair, Cartier probably sells a lot more watches to women than to men. Cartier isn't, in its modern brand positioning, particularly manly in the beefcake, protein, and creatine kind of way. Cartier is about refinement and restraint and not ostentatiousness. If you get that vibe off of Cartier and don't feel it's you, then don't buy it. 2, the Santos in particular is a scratch magnet. All steel watches are scratch magnets. All polished steel is a scratch magnet. Your Rolex clasp will scratch pretty much the same as the bezel on a Santos. But the Santos bezel is on top and it's exposed. So unlike a clasp or a bracelet, you see those scratches all the time. They're just more noticeable. And if patina is not you, you don't buy this watch. I've got a leather chair. When buying it, I could choose between something called aniline leather and non-aniline leather. Aniline leather is untreated essentially, which means that the pores of the leather are open. That means that over time the leather will change color and react to wear and tear more visibly. Where you sweat, that leather will look different. Aniline leather is the good leather. It's the more expensive leather. I didn't choose that leather because I don't want my sweaty backside to color my chair. 3, Cartier is, for what you get in the Tank and the Santos Dumont, expensive. You just pay a lot for a basic quartz watch. The Santos is more in line price-wise with the competition, but the 2 others are price-wise a little bit off. But if you can get over those 3 things, then Cartier offers something quite special. The Tag Heuer Monaco made its debut in 1969 and reached pop culture icon status when Steve McQueen wore the colorful wrist chronograph for his role as a racing driver in the 1971 movie Le Mans. The Monaco, also designed by Jack Heuer and named for the Monaco Grand Prix, was the first wristwatch with a square case that was also water resistant, as well as one of the first chronograph watches to be equipped with a self-winding mechanical movement. The current models are outfitted with the in-house caliber 02 with an 80-hour power reserve. This is one of those classic racing chronographs that has historical significance, tons of presence, and is visually striking. This watch is like very few other chronographs. Steve McQueen wore it, and so did our good friend Heisenberg. But if there's one reason to not buy this watch, it is wearability. This thing, irrespective of its formal dimensions, is a big watch. Square watches hit different, and for a lot of wrists, this watch just comes across as a Ben 10 watch. It's big, it's bulky, and you have been warned. The IWC Big Pilot is an icon of watches and an icon of flight. This watch has its origins in a timepiece IWC produced for the German Luftwaffe, which was simply named the Big Pilot's watch. It was enormous, 55 millimeters, but it was built for legibility and to be worn over flight clothing. Under the cuff was never a consideration for the original Big Pilot. And as John Mayer once said, you could sit it upright and use it as a bedside table clock. Today, it's available in its true-to-form Big Pilot version at 46.2 millimeters. There's not a 55 millimeter version these days, but that's all things considered not a real problem. There's also a 43 millimeter version. It's still big, it still emphasizes legibility, and of all the millions of Pilot's watches out there, it is the IWC Big Pilot that you associate with Pilot's watches more than any other. You simply can't use the argument, it's too big, as a reason to not buy a watch when it's called the Big Pilot's watch. The fact is, there are 2 options. Either the Pilot is big, or the watch is big, or both, of course. The reason you might not want to buy this particular icon is down to 2 related aspects. 1, IWC knows what to charge for a luxury watch, and luxury costs what luxury costs. But it is very expensive at almost $14,000 for a time, date, and power reserve steel watch. Second, it's not that the IWC isn't an icon, but even in the Big Pilot's version, it has lost some of its tool watch feel to it. I can personally live with that on a Submariner. I can live with that on an IWC Pilot Mark 20. Actually, I love it on a Mark 20. But for the Big Pilot specifically, the combination of price and polish of bezel and highly polished crown just isn't very toolish. Leica, Storva, and a million others make more tool-forward designs that are nowhere near mechanically as competent as the IWC, but they pack every bit as much Pilot's watch punch for less money and more tool vibe. In 1948, the 100th anniversary of its founding, Omega launched the first Seamaster, which was not a dive watch as we know it in the modern sense. The category didn't really exist at the time, but it was marketed as a watch for town, sea, and country. In 1957, they debuted the professional Seamaster 300 with a water resistance of 200 meters. In the 1990s, they added the 300M, which incorporated a helium release valve and a wave pattern dial. It was also Pierce Brosnan's Bond watch for multiple movies, and for the longest time, it has been Omega's flagship diver, offering an incredibly spec dive watch with a world-class movement at a highly compelling price. It wears well, it looks good, it's a fabulous watch in a ton of ways. But there are multiple reasons why you wouldn't buy it, and none of them are about the helium escape valve. You either love that or you hate it. No, the biggest problem with the Seamaster 300M is that it needs an update. With the new Planet Ocean, we know that Omega can make a thinner watch. The Seamaster 300M, although not unwearably thick, is just thick by competitor standards these days. The METAS movement inside is likely the best mass-produced movement in the world at the moment. 55, 60 hours of power reserve is more than enough, but in a world where other brands offer 80 or 120 hours, it's just not competitive. And they don't have a good bracelet yet. The current choice of either a chunky 90s bracelet or an unwearable mesh bracelet is just not attractive. The Omega Seamaster 300M is in need of multiple updates, and my guess is it's going to come at some point. Maybe next year, but the current iteration is just not compelling enough unless you want a no-date version and intend to wear it on a NATO. Then, absolutely, go for it. For me, the Radiomir from Panerai is the icon, but what goes for the Radiomir largely goes for the Luminor as well. Panerai are the Italians who made dive watches for soldiers who had to plant bombs on boats' hulls in harbors or something. They filled it with luminous material and they called it Radiomir. They made a cushion case, they made the signature sandwich dials. One watch has wire lugs and the other has a lockdown crown mechanism, which is what literally defines the Panerai Luminor. Back in the day, the watches were assembled by Rolex, with Panerai supplying the luminous dials and military modifications. It became the standard issue for Italian naval commandos throughout World War II and afterwards. Panerai used to be only about big watches, but these days you can get a Luminor at 42mm and Radiomirs in the Due lineup at less than 40mm, although some of them are marketed more aggressively towards women given the case finishing and dial choices. But why not buy them? Price and quality. A 40mm Couranta will set you back $6,500. It's got no steel bracelet, only 50 meters of water resistance. The movement is not highly accurate. Panerai is openly known for cutting corners in terms of movement parts and finishing. You can get an Aquaterra or an IWC Pilot that in every possible way are better value for money. A regular Luminor is $9,000. It's almost the same price as a Submariner, but has an objectively worse movement both in terms of specs, but also in terms of finishing. Richemont are the conglomerate that I personally think are by far the most egregious price gougers. They are exemplified by especially JLC and Panerai. Even within Richemont, the price and value proposition of Panerai is completely disconnected. 99% of all watches lose some value the moment you walk out of the store. But a Panerai falls off a cliff, crashes through the Earth's crust, and continues dropping until it hits the center of the Earth's molten core. There's always a question as to what's an icon and what isn't. These were some of the watches that are considered both icons and have mass market appeal. They're all good, but all have a reason why you might want to consider not getting it. There are other icons that you would likely love to hear my thoughts on, and that's for another time. But from this video, I think if you walk away with one sort of high-level consideration, then it would be, don't just mindlessly buy any watch. Consider your use case, consider your style, research a little, and be open to options. Being an icon is not a reason enough to buy a watch. Unless it's a Casio F91, that's a watch you should just buy. End of story. Share your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.